My name is Dr. Alex Reyes, an ER physician with 12 years of experience. I've stitched wounds that bled rivers, restarted hearts that stopped beating, and held hands through final moments. The emergency room is a place of chaos, but it's a chaos I understand. Trauma, illness, human fragility, all governed by science. Yet, one night, one patient, one case, it defied every rule I'd ever learned. It wasn't just a medical mystery, it was something else entirely. Before I jump into this story, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. This is a journey you'll want to take with me, because what I'm about to share might make you question what's possible. Trust me, this is a case you won't forget. It was June 14, 2023, a humid night that clung to the skin like a second layer. St. Mary's Hospital was unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like the calm before a storm. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting sterile white glows that flickered slightly, as if the building itself was restless. I was at the nurse's station, scribbling notes on a chart for a patient with a fractured wrist, when the EMS radio sparked to life. The voice on the other end was clipped, professional, but there was an edge to it, a tightness I couldn't place. Unresponsive male, mid-30s, found in an alley off 4th Street. Vitals unstable. ETA 5 minutes. Routine enough, I thought. I jotted down the details. Male, no ID, possible overdose or trauma. But that voice lingered in my mind, hesitant, like the paramedic was holding something back. What hadn't he said? Why did his words feel incomplete? The patient rolled into the ER at exactly 11:52 p.m. We called him John Doe, standard for unknowns. No wallet, no phone, just a tattered jacket and a single key in his left pocket. The key was old, rusted, with an odd, angular shape that didn't match any lock I'd ever seen. I set it on the bedside table, noting its weight in my hand. Heavier than it looked, cold to the touch, despite the warm night. The patient was pale, his skin clammy, almost waxy, like he'd been submerged in ice water. His vitals were a mess, pulse erratic, jumping between 40 and 120 beats per minute, blood pressure 80-50, dangerously low, temperature 94 degrees Fahrenheit, hypothermic, despite the June humidity. I started the protocol. IV saline, oxygen mask, EKG lead snapped into place. His breathing was steady, almost mechanical, but his pupils were fixed, dilated, unresponsive to my pen light. That was the first red flag. Comatose patients don't breathe like that. Their bodies don't move with such precision. I've seen hundreds of comatose patients, brain injuries, overdoses, strokes. There's a pattern, a logic to their symptoms. But this man, his body was a contradiction. The EKG showed a normal sinus rhythm one moment, then wild spikes and drops the next, like his heart was arguing with itself. I drew blood for a tox screen, expecting to find opioids, alcohol, maybe benzos. The results came back at 12:15 a.m. Clean. No drugs, no toxins, no alcohol. His labs were pristine, almost too perfect, like a textbook case of nothing. I ordered a CT scan to rule out a brain bleed or stroke, but the radiology tech called me at 12:34 a.m., her voice trembling. She said the machine kept glitching. Every scan of his brain came out blurred, not just fuzzy but distorted, like static on an old TV. It's like something's blocking the image, she said. I asked her to run it again. Same result. What could interfere with a CT scanner like that? Electromagnetic interference, a malfunction or something else. Or, by 1 a.m., the ER had settled into an eerie stillness. The only sounds were the hum of the ventilator, the distant cough of a patient in Bay 3, and the faint drip of IV fluid. I stood by John Doe's bed, watching his chest rise and fall with that unnerving precision. The air in the room felt heavy, thick with a pressure I couldn't name. That's when I heard it. A low, rhythmic tapping, like someone rapping their knuckles softly against glass. I froze, my pen hovering over the chart. I checked the window, the door, the equipment. Nothing. The sound seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. I glanced at the key on the bedside table, its rusted surface catching the fluorescent light in a way that made it look almost alive. On impulse, I picked it up. It was freezing, so cold it stung my fingers, like I'd plunged my hand into a bucket of ice. For a split second I felt something. Not a sound, not a movement, but a pulse, a vibration in the air, like the room itself was breathing. My heart pounded. What was I holding? That moment still haunts me. It wasn't just the cold of the key or the tapping. It was the feeling of being watched. Not by a person, not by anything I could see, but by something present, aware. I set the key down, my hands unsteady, and wrote in the chart, "Environmental anomaly noted, 1:15 a.m." I tried to focus on the patient, checking his IV, adjusting the oxygen flow, but my eyes kept drifting to that key. Why was it so cold? Why was it the only thing he carried? I called in Dr. Carter, our on-call neurologist, at 1:45 a.m. He reviewed the chart, examined the patient, and frowned at the inconsistent vitals. "Nothing adds up," he said, his voice low. As he left, he paused at the door and muttered, "This room feels wrong." I didn't ask what he meant. I felt it too. The air was dense, like wading through water, and the tapping had stopped, leaving a silence that was somehow louder. By 2:30 a.m. I was digging deeper. I cross-referenced the alley where he was found, 4th Street, a rundown area near the old warehouse district. No reports of missing persons matched his description. Male, mid-30s, brown hair, no distinguishing marks except a faint scar on his left wrist, thin and deliberate like a surgical cut. I checked the hospital database for similar cases, unresponsive patients with no ID, found under mysterious circumstances. Nothing. The tox screen was clean, the CT scans useless. I even called the paramedics who brought him in, hoping for more details. The lead EMT, Mike, sounded uneasy. He was just lying there, he said. No blood, no signs of trauma, just still, like he was waiting for something. Waiting for what? I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. At 3 a.m., the patient's vitals stabilized, but something else changed. His hand twitched, not the random jerk of a reflex, but a slow, deliberate curl, like he was reaching for something invisible. I checked his restraints. They were tight, no give. I leaned closer, my stethoscope cold against my palm. That's when the monitor beeped, a single sharp spike in his heart rate, from 70 to 140 in a second. I glanced at the screen, and for one impossible moment it displayed a word. Open. Not a code, not a glitch, just the word, stark white against the black background. My breath caught. I blinked, and it was gone, replaced by normal vitals. I called the tech, demanding a check on the machine. He ran diagnostics. Nothing. "It's fine," he said, but his eyes darted to the patient like he didn't believe his own words. I wrote it down. "Monitor anomaly, 3:02 a.m. My hand was shaking. I'm trained to stay rational, to trust data, to follow protocol. But that night, protocol felt like a flimsy shield. The word open burned in my mind. Was it a glitch? A message? I kept circling back to the key. What did it unlock? A door? A box? Something else? I tried to focus on the patient, but the room felt smaller, the walls closer, the air colder. I checked his chart again, looking for anything I'd missed. His temperature was creeping up, 95 degrees now, still low but rising. His pupils remained fixed, but his breathing, it was too perfect, too rhythmic, like a metronome set to a beat I couldn't hear. I started to wonder if he was really unconscious, or if he was aware. By 3:45 a.m. the tapping returned, louder, more insistent. It wasn't coming from the window or the door, it was coming from him. From his chest, a faint, rhythmic knock, like something trapped inside was trying to break free. I grabbed my stethoscope, my hands slick with sweat, and pressed it to his sternum. His heartbeat was steady, 72 beats per minute, but beneath it, I heard something else, A low hum, almost like a voice, too faint to decipher. It wasn't a murmur, not a medical sound I could name. It was wrong. My pulse raced, matching the rhythm of the tapping. I pulled the stethoscope away, my ears ringing. The key on the table glinted, and for a moment I thought I saw it move. Just a fraction, a tremor. I blinked, and it was still. Auditory anomaly detected, 3:50 a.m., I wrote, my handwriting jagged. I needed answers. I called the hospital's security team, asking for footage from the alley where he was found. They pulled the nearest street camera, but the tape was useless. Static from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m., the exact window he was discovered. A coincidence? I didn't think so. I went back to the patient, checking his vitals again. His temperature was 96 degrees now, his pulse steady at 70, but his hand twitched again, fingers curling inward, then relaxing. I shone my penlight into his eyes. No response, but the hairs on my neck stood up. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me, even with those blank, dilated pupils. I stepped back, my breath shallow. The tapping stopped, but the silence was worse. RTX. System, it looks like your message was cut off. Did you want to provide additional details or instructions? For now, I'll assume you want me to continue expanding the script to reach the 8,000-word target while maintaining the narrator-only format and the specified style. Since the script is already structured, I'll continue by adding more depth to the existing scenes, introducing new investigative threads, and extending reflective and suspenseful moments to build toward the target word count. Below is the continuation, picking up where the previous expansion left off and aiming to reach approximately 8,000 words total. That tapping sound lingered in my mind, like a song I couldn't forget. It wasn't just the rhythm, it was the intent behind it, like a signal from somewhere I couldn't reach. I sat at the nurse's station at 4 a.m., staring at the key on the counter in front of me. It looked so ordinary, yet so out of place, a relic from another time, its edges worn but sharp, its weight unnatural. I turned it over in my gloved hand, searching for a clue, a mark, anything. There was nothing, just that cold, heavy metal that seemed to absorb the warmth from my fingers. I wrote in the chart, "Object retrieved from patient, rusted key, origin unknown." The words felt inadequate, like I was trying to describe a dream in medical terms. I couldn't stop thinking about that word on the monitor, open. Was it a glitch, a message, or something else entirely? I'm a scientist. I don't believe in something else. But that night, I wasn't so sure. I decided to dig deeper. At 4:15 a.m., I called the police department to check for any reports from the alley on 4th Street. The officer on duty, a tired-sounding woman named Reyes, said there was nothing unusual. No calls, no incidents, just the usual vagrants and late-night bar crowds. I pressed her about the patient, describing his appearance, medium build, brown hair, scar on his left wrist. "Sounds like half the guys we see," she said, but promised to check the system. I hung up, frustrated. The key sat on the counter, taunting me. I picked it up again, turning it under the light. It wasn't a house key, not a car key, not even a safe deposit box key. It was too large, too intricate, like something from an old lockbox or a gate. But what gate? Where? I needed to know more about this man. I returned to the patient's bedside, my clipboard heavy with unanswered questions. His vitals were stable now. Pulse 70, blood pressure 90/60, temperature 96.5 degrees. Progress, but not enough. I checked his pupils again, shining the penlight into his eyes. Still fixed, still dilated, but there was something about the way the light caught his irises. A faint shimmer, like a reflection of something deep within. I shook my head, chalking it up to exhaustion. 12-hour shifts in the ER do that to you, but the feeling of being watched hadn't left me. I glanced at the key, now back on the table, and wondered if it was the source of my unease. I decided to take a closer look at his clothes. The jacket was cheap, synthetic, torn at the shoulder. No tags, no labels, just a faint smell of damp earth and something metallic, like rust. I checked the pockets again. Empty, except for a scrap of paper I hadn't noticed before, folded tightly in the lining. The paper was small, no bigger than a matchbook, yellowed and brittle. I unfolded it carefully, my gloved fingers trembling. It was a handwritten note, the ink faded but legible. "Don't open it." The words hit me like a punch. My breath caught and the room seemed to tilt. I looked at the patient, his face serene, almost lifeless, yet his chest rose and fell with that mechanical precision. "Don't open what? The key? Something else?" The note was unsigned, no date, no context. I placed it in an evidence bag, my hands shaking as I sealed it. The tapping started again, faint but unmistakable, coming from his direction. I stepped closer, my stethoscope dangling from my neck. The sound was clearer now, a deliberate rhythm. 3 taps, pause, 2 taps, pause, 3 taps. It wasn't his fingers, not his body moving. It was deeper, internal, like a code from within. I pressed the stethoscope to his chest again. The hum was still there, low and steady, like a distant chant. My skin prickled. "What are you trying to tell me?" I whispered, not expecting an answer. "I've spent my career trusting science, data, evidence, logic. But at 4:30 a.m., science felt like a distant friend who'd abandoned me." I sat by his bed, staring at the note in the evidence bag. "Don't open it." The words echoed in my head, mingling with the memory of the monitor's "open," a contradiction or a warning. I thought about the patient's life. Who was he? A drifter, a victim, something else? The scar on his wrist bothered me. It wasn't a random cut, it was precise, almost ritualistic, like a mark made with purpose. I checked his other wrist, then his arms, his neck. No other scars, no tattoos, no signs of a struggle, just that one mark, thin and silver, glowing faintly under the light. I wrote it down. Scar on left wrist, approximately 2 centimeter, linear, healed. The words felt clinical, but my mind was racing with questions I couldn't ask out loud. At 4:45 a.m., I called the hospital's head of security, a gruff ex-cop named Jenkins. I asked him to check the alley footage again, to look for anything unusual, vehicles, people, anything. He called back 10 minutes later, his voice flat. "Camera's been down for weeks. City hasn't fixed it, nothing to see." I thanked him, but my frustration grew. No footage, no police report, no identity. This man was a ghost. I turned to the hospital's database again, searching for patterns. Unresponsive patients, alley discoveries, hypothermia in summer. I found one case from 2018, a woman found in a park, no ID, unresponsive, low body temperature. She died within hours, no cause determined. The similarities sent a chill through me. I dug deeper, pulling her file. No mention of a key, but there was a note. Patient reported hearing voices before cardiac arrest. Voices. My eyes flicked to John Doe. Was he hearing something too? At 5 a.m., the air in the room changed, colder, heavier, like a storm was brewing inside the walls. The tapping grew louder, more urgent, a pattern I couldn't decode. I checked the monitors. Vital stable, no change. But the sound was relentless, echoing in my skull. I leaned over the patient, my flashlight trembling in my hand. His face was still, but his lips twitched just for a moment like he was trying to speak. I held my breath, waiting. Nothing. Then the monitor beeped again, a single piercing note. I looked up. The screen flickered, and there it was again. Open. Clear, bold, unmistakable. My heart stopped. I hit the reset button, but the word lingered for a second before vanishing. I called the tech again, my voice sharp. "Check it now," I said. He arrived in minutes, ran diagnostics and shook his head. "It's fine, Doc. No errors." But his eyes were wide, his hands unsteady as he left. I didn't blame him. I felt it too. The room was wrong, the air alive with something I couldn't name. Why did that word, open, feel like a command? I sat down, my legs weak, and stared at the key. It was just a piece of metal, but it felt like a challenge, a dare. I thought about the note. Don't open it. 2 messages, 2 opposites, and I was caught in the middle. I've faced death in the ER, gunshots, heart attacks, overdoses, but this was different. This wasn't medical. This was something else, something that made my skin crawl and my mind race. I checked the patient's chart again, desperate for answers. His temperature was 97 degrees now, his pulse steady, his breathing unchanged. But the tapping continued, a relentless reminder that something was happening, something I couldn't control. I wrote, "Monitor anomaly repeated, 5:05 a.m., no technical explanation." My pen shook, the ink smudging. I decided to take a risk. At 5:15 a.m., I called a colleague from pathology, Dr. Emily Nguyen, an expert in unusual cases. I sent her the patient's labs and the note asking for her take. She called back at 5:30 a.m., her voice cautious. "The labs are too clean," she said. "No electrolytes out of balance, no signs of infection or trauma. It's like his body's—" Paused. The word stuck with me. I asked about the note. She hesitated. Could be a delusion, a warning from someone else, or something symbolic. Symbolic? I didn't like where this was going, but I couldn't stop. I asked her to check the scar on his wrist to see if it matched any known patterns. She promised to look into it, but her tone was uneasy, like she sensed the same strangeness I did. At 5:45 a.m., the tapping stopped abruptly, leaving a silence so heavy it pressed against my chest. I stood by the patient, my stethoscope in hand, listening. The hum was gone, replaced by the steady thump of his heart. But the silence wasn't a relief. It was a void, a warning. I checked his eyes again. No change, but the shimmer in his irises seemed brighter, almost glowing. I stepped back, my breath shallow. The key on the table caught my eye, its surface reflecting the light in a way that seemed to pulse. I reached for it, then stopped. My instincts screamed to leave it alone, but my curiosity burned. I picked it up, the cold biting my fingers again. This time, the pulse in the air was stronger, like a heartbeat in the room. I dropped the key, my hands shaking. "What are you?" I whispered, not sure if I meant the key or the man. I'm not a superstitious person. I believe in evidence, in facts. But that night, I felt like I was standing on the edge of something vast and unknown. The patient was a puzzle, but not a medical one. The key, the note, the tapping, the word on the screen, they were pieces of something bigger, something I wasn't meant to understand. I thought about my training, the years spent learning to save lives, to explain the unexplainable. But this was beyond me. I sat down, my hands clasped tightly, and stared at the patient. Who was he? Why was he here? And why did I feel like he was here for me? I wrote in the chart, "Patient remains unresponsive. Environmental anomalies ongoing." The words felt hollow, like a lie I told myself to stay sane. At 6 a.m., I called the police again, this time speaking to a detective named Reyes. I described the patient, the key, the note. He listened, then said, "Sounds like a drifter with a story. We'll check the morgue records." Morgue records. The words hit me hard. Was that where this was heading? I thanked him and hung up, my mind racing. I decided to examine the key more closely. I took it to the lab, where a technician with a magnifying glass studied it. "Old," she said. "Maybe 19th century. Handmade, not mass-produced." She pointed to faint scratches on the surface, like tiny runes or symbols too worn to read. I asked her to run a metallurgical test. She frowned. "That'll take days." I nodded, knowing I couldn't wait that long. Back in the ER at 6:30 a.m., the room felt colder, the air thick with that same oppressive weight. The patient's vitals were unchanged, but his hand twitched again, fingers curling like they were grasping at something. I checked the restraints, my heart pounding. The tapping started again, slow and deliberate, like a countdown. I pressed the stethoscope to his chest. The hum was back, louder, more distinct, like a whisper in a language I didn't know. I pulled away, my ears ringing. The monitor beeped, and I braced myself. The word "open" flashed again, longer this time, 3 seconds before fading. I grabbed the chart, my pen shaking as I wrote, "Monitor anomaly, 6:35 a.m. Word "open" displayed, no explanation. The note in the evidence bag seemed to stare at me. Don't open it. I felt trapped, caught between 2 commands I didn't understand. I've seen patients die, seen miracles, seen the impossible become possible. But this man was different. He wasn't just a patient, he was a question, a challenge to everything I believed. I thought about the key, the note, the scar, the tapping. Were they connected? Was I meant to find them? I sat by his bed, watching his chest rise and fall, and felt a wave of empathy. Whoever he was alone, a mystery no one claimed. I wondered if he knew what was happening, if he was trapped in his own body trying to reach me. The thought made my chest ache. I'm a doctor, not a detective. But that night, I was both, and neither was enough. At 7 a.m., everything changed. The patient's eyes snapped open, clear, focused, alive. I froze, my clipboard slipping from my hands. He looked at me, his gaze piercing, and said, "You found it." His voice was calm, deep, like he'd been awake the whole time. I stammered, "What?" He smiled, a faint knowing curve of his lips. The door. My blood ran cold. Before I could ask more, his vitals crashed. Pulse flatlining, blood pressure 0. The monitor screamed. I called a code, and the team rushed in. We worked on him for 20 minutes. Chest compressions, defibrillation, epinephrine. Nothing. Time of death, 7:23 a.m. The key sat on the table, untouched. I don't know why, but I slipped it into my pocket. It felt like the only piece of him left. That case still keeps me up at night. I've gone over the charts, the logs, the note, the key. Everything checks out, yet nothing explains it. The key sits in a drawer at home, locked away, but sometimes I take it out, turning it over in my hands, searching for answers. The tapping comes back in my dreams, faint but persistent, like a message I can't decode. Dr. Nguyen's tests on the scar found nothing unusual, just an old wound. But the metallurgical test on the key revealed traces of an unknown alloy, something not in any database. The police found no record of him, no family, no name. He's still John Doe, a ghost in my memory. What door was he talking about? Was it real, or was it in his mind? And why do I feel like I'm still supposed to find it? Every night I ask myself, was he warning me or guiding me? I don't know. Maybe I never will, but the questions keep me awake, the key keeps me searching, and the word "open" keeps me wondering. If you've ever experienced something that made you question reality, something that lingers in your mind like a shadow, tell me about it in the comments. I read everyone, and I need to know I'm not alone. If this story got under your skin, hit that thumbs up and share it with someone who loves a mystery. Maybe together we can figure out what "open" means, what door I'm supposed to find. Until next time, stay curious.